This time we'll move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Harper.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of events I want to remind you all about this week. You see them on your screen, the Daresville High School baccalaureate as well as Cass and Woodland, the dates and times and the locations of those. Also, board members, I want to remind you of our graduations, which take place Friday, starting with Cass High School, and then a little trip up to Daresville, and then Saturday morning at Woodland High School. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the minutes. You have the amended, corrected minutes with you. You have a copy of those.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Can you check to make sure on that vote? I didn't bring the packet. I've got.
Yeah, you have should have an amended copy in on your table tonight.
You do.
Yes. Okay.
All right, I understand it was changed.
Yes, thank you. This time I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes you have before you for the April 15th, 2013 work session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, if you'll raise your hand, please. It's 5-0. You have the April 22nd, 2013 business meeting minutes before you. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, if you'll raise your hand, please. It is 5-0. Move now for the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, if you'll raise your hand, please. It is 5-0. Item G, the consent agenda. You have the consent agenda before you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, if you'll raise your hand, please. It is 5-0. Next item is under H. You see H1, Board Policy BCBD. I'll entertain a motion to approve that item as a first reading.
I'll make that motion.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I just want to let Matt know. I understand that he's asked the superintendent to try to help get the agendas out sooner and earlier so that it gives time for the media, etc. And before I can vote on this, I'd like to wait and see how we do as a board with the superintendent getting that forward. And if that doesn't happen down the road, I will vote for your motion, but right now, just
honestly, it didn't even happen as of today. I mean, you know, even with having this item on the agenda, you know, it was very slow. I'm not even sure this copy of the tentative budget even ever made it on the website as of today. So I really don't understand why we would postpone this. I mean, the problem is, if you look at our entire calendar that's on the website, there were 8 of these double meetings. We still have 6 left. So a significant portion of our meeting schedule has created this problem with these double meetings. And today's a perfect example when we have a change that we receive on Friday to the agenda, and then this information isn't made public to the media, our constituents. Honestly, even as a board, we haven't seen this agenda until we showed up today. I just think we have a real problem getting this information out, and I don't know that waiting is going to be helpful to the community, especially when you think that we have to have 2 readings. So now we're just pushing this item off even further because of the 2 reading requirement, and we're going to be impacted even more by these double meetings.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, if you'll raise your hand, please. All those opposed, if you'll raise your hand, please. It is 4-1 opposed. Thank you. Item H2, the sale of real estate, Old Cloverleaf property. Dr. Harper.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we've had an offer on Old Cloverleaf Elementary School and asked the board to approve that for sale this evening.
I'll entertain a motion to the sale of the Old Cloverleaf school property.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir. Just want to make the public aware that as far as the money from that sale, the superintendent can use that in any area. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, if you raise your hand, please. It is 5-0. Item H3 is FY14 budget. Dr. Harper.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. There certainly has been some delay in getting the information to you. A lot of that information, we've been waiting on some very specific information to direct us with the budget, particularly with revenues and expenditures for us. Todd Hooper and I working on the budget. We worked as late as yesterday in trying to make sure that we had good numbers, good accurate numbers for you. And I would ask that Todd come up and discuss what he has prepared for us.
Obviously, it's a stressful time of the year. We've been working on the budget for quite some time. Obviously, we usually try to begin that, and in, on, or about January, we begin to put agenda together, assess our student FTE, assess our revenue that we expect to get from the state as well as locally. And those two items are a big part of what drives our budget. We've just recently, only in the last 2 weeks, got a copy of the proposed tax digest. First of all, let me say that that tax digest for the county or the unincorporated area, according to the information we have now, is decreased by just slightly under 0.5%. So the local revenue reflects that, as well as on the state side. That revenue came out about a month ago in terms of loose numbers. We still don't have an allotment sheet. So definitively, we're basing our numbers on what the Financial Review Office has provided us up to this point. Once we move to expenditures, again, the FTE is what drives our consumables in the classroom as well as our staffing needs. A large driver of our budget this year is health insurance. We've talked about that quite some time. The health insurance, especially for classified employees, it goes up about $150 a month each year. This year we're at about $7,100 a year for a classified employee. That should go up another $1,800 next year for FY15. So we have to take those things into consideration as we build this budget so that we don't set ourselves up for a train wreck next year as well. Another item to consider, we just got this information last week and we already built the budget. It's kind of odd, but natural gas for us, we buy it through a consortium, which is done through RESA. Last year it was about 40 cents a therm. This year it's going to 47 cents a therm. It's kind of odd whenever you consider the cost of natural gas is going down. But that is the price that was made available to us, and of course the RESA consortium participates. Another item that drives our budget is the fuel budget within our transportation department. This year we've been fortunate in that what we budgeted was not exceeded and provided part of the cushion that we expect whenever we go to do the end of our year actual financials. And then of course as we add campuses, there's fixed costs to buildings in terms of maintenance, utilities, and just the continuing monitoring of those buildings. And again, the movement to actually sell the property tonight was a positive move for us and will help our budget. Our projected beginning fund balance for the year, you'll see, is $15.6 million. Let me tell you, that moves down from just a little over $18 million that we started out with actually. So as you see, again, a budget deficit is not just a budget, it is an actual number. We're losing almost $1.5 million fund balance. Obviously, as we begin to look next, our local sources, you'll see $37 million. That $37 million is made up of not only local taxation, but it's made up of interest earnings, it's made up of revenues from the use of our facilities, as well as We have incidentals that come in through E-rate and those types of things that we bring back taxpayers' money that they put on their cellular and their phone bills. Our state sources, $64 million. That number has dropped tremendously over the course of time. Let me tell you, part of that is called austerity. And when you look at our austerity numbers, it's well over, it's about $10 million. Austerity is basically a line item that the state imposes upon us due to what they consider a revenue shortfall. Whether you want to call that a cut in salaries or you want to call it a cut to consumables, again, it's applied through the whole entire budget. That's within the $64 million. Federal sources, the $322,000 that you see there, again, that is made up of E-rate funding that comes in, as well as it's made up of what we call certified flood funds that comes off of Lake Altoona, for a total of $101.5 million. Construction, which comprises the largest part of our budget, and one of the things that we try to maintain from year to year, because obviously that is what we measure our success in our community by, is our academic achievement, and we want to maintain that. Once you look at this budget, again, the expenditures are $107.5 million. That's in excess of a little over $6 million of our revenue. When you subtract the $6 million from the projected beginning fund balance of $15.5 million, it leaves us a projected ending fund balance of $9.5 million. Now, one of the policies that we have in place is to actually endear to maintain a fund balance of 10%. If we'd done that, our fund balance would be approximately $10.7 million, which, again, based on these projections, we fall about $1.2 million short of that. Again, it's not an impact, but it is something that we endeavor to do, is to maintain that. Obviously, fund balance, the reason it's important, it allows us to continue operations in times of austerity, in times of increase in health insurance premiums, as well as you'll see TRS in FY15 will increase about 8% too locally for the Board of Education. We can cover special revenue funds. That is basically our pre-K program and our federal programs, which is our Title I, Title II, our IDEA, Title VI, as well as other federal programs. The McKinney-Vento Act is included. School nutrition is pretty straightforward. We have our local revenues, which is based off of lunch program. Our state sources is basically the state supplement they provide, and then the federal sources is based off of their reimbursement to us in addition to commodities, which is donated foods. You'll notice that our projected revenue is about $7.4 million with expenses in the neighborhood of $8.4 million, and we would expect to drop fund balance there. Capital projects is pretty straightforward. You'll see the beginning fund balance is $33 million. Let me remind you, those are SPLOST funds, and they are restricted strictly to capital projects. They cannot be used for general operations. Those are largely comprised of bond funds that are unspent at this point in time. When you look at the $15.3 million, that's based off of a monthly revenue stream that we would expect from monthly SPLOST collections of about $1.2 to $1.3 million. When you look at the capital outlay, we still have the School of Emerson to complete. We have the projects at White and I believe Hamilton Crossing, as well as the old Adairsville Middle School that we will have to contemplate in addition to technology projects. The transfers you see there are basically at $16.8 million are the bond funds, not fund, but the SPLOST funds that we take in and we have on hand. We actually transfer those over to the debt service fund, which you will see the next to the last column. That's based off of our debt service payments that we make twice, well actually 4 times a year to our bondholders. And we don't see any problem with continuing to do that. Again, that's basically the consolidated tentative budget. I remind you that it's a tentative budget, meaning that we put it out there for your inspection, for your thoughts, and the community as well. And we will advertise that 2 times. We have it scheduled that we would want to advertise it Sunday, June the 2nd, Sunday, June the 9th. And then, depending on conversations and input, we would try to adopt the budget on our regular Monday, June the 17th board meeting. And that provides us almost a month for everybody to look at it. Think this over. One of the things I would tell you, obviously, as we look at this, the expenditures exceed the revenues. And it's something that not only Bartow County schools, but many other school systems are facing, or have faced, and made some tough decisions. But just for some information purposes, I reviewed our budgets going back to FY 2009. In FY 2009, we budgeted in the general fund $122.9 million revenue. And we budgeted $122.9 million of expenses, a balanced budget, at which time we know that those were good times. When you compare that to the FY 2014 budget, we're down to $101.4 million of revenue. It's a 17% drop in revenue. The 20% drop in state revenue when you compare it. So quite honestly, we are funding more of our local education expenses locally. If you look at our expenditures, we went from $122.9 million to $107.5 million. That is about a 12.5% drop in expenditures. Fortunately, we were in a position that we've had fund balance to depend on to be able to survive these budget deficits. And that's continued to erode. There was a time when we had a $122 million budget that we actually had over $25 million of fund balance. And you could incur these things and hope that the economy improved, hope that the legislative generosity might improve. That's not proved to be the case. I might add that during the course of these times, our millage has, I know from 2006, remained at 17.9. We've not raised taxes. Property values have fallen. That's one of the reasons you see a big impact on our local revenue. Local revenue, I didn't even say this, but during the 2009 timeframe to 2014, it dropped 11.5%. So to answer the question of, how did we get here and why are we here? There's several answers. Not only has revenue dropped, but you've seen health insurance increase. I can remember when it was $162 a month for classified employees, and now it's $500 and something dollars for classified employees. CRS was not near as much. It's increased as well, and will continue to increase next year. In addition to that, we used to have fuel that was below $1 a gallon. Oh, excuse me, below that a long time ago, but you're looking at $4 a gallon. The high point sometimes it's got close to that. And when you start adding that up, those are not nickel and dime. Those are big dollars that affect our departments. Not to mention our utilities have gone up. And we have cut staff during the period of time. Staff salaries and benefits makes up 89% of our budget. I was looking earlier, when you begin to look at the total staff salaries and benefits in this budget, out of $107.5 million of expenses, $95.4 million of salaries and benefits. So when you begin to look and say, how can I make up $6 million? There's only $12 million of energy, gas, consumables, and supplies in there. Quite obviously, to cover that gap, it's impossible to do cutting stuff. So I say that to kind of lay the line out that, obviously if our fund balance goes to $9.5 million, we won't be able to continue operating the way that we have in the past. And, this year, we expect to come in under budget. I think we budgeted about a $6.5 to $6.8 million deficit. But with current year expenditures, changes in the way that we staff, fuel savings that we were fortunate to experience, we'll end up with probably about a $4.5 million deficit that we actually incurred. That's what we project. But I'll be honest with you, it's kind of a dismal picture as we begin to look at, how much longer can we go budgeting deficits? And I would be remiss to point out that we have to begin thinking about how we view education in Bartow County over the next, probably really the next 7 months, as we take this budget on and we go into the next budget.
Questions?
Got a couple of questions. How's the number of students affecting the budget? Because I saw where we had a drop in number of students. How does that affect?
You do have a slight drop in your FTE. You could actually increase your FTE slightly and still lose funding based upon how those students change. Obviously, we receive more funding for our special needs students, and we receive more funding for our EIP students in the lower grades. And if you have improvements in your academic achievement, those shifts are going to take place, and we had some shifting to take place there. So again, not just picking up students or losing students, but how those students shift between the programs will affect our funding.
Another question too, and if you don't know this off the top of your head, I understand, but how many of our staff and teachers have maxed out on the step increase? Because I think the state's like about, 19 years, but I don't know what Bartow County is or what we are. 21?
Yeah. I would have to work with our HR department to get that number for you specifically.
I just got it, 21.
Well, I mean, if you're actually talking about numbers.
Oh, how many, so we know how to...
I will tell you this much, based on, what we do is we submit what we call our CPI, our certified, staff, in September. That information includes their degrees, their number of years of education, and based on that information, when we get our following year allotment sheet, it will affect, it used to not, but it will affect our funding for health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But what it also does, it takes and says, okay, I got a base teacher salary, and let's say it's $36,000, and based upon the number of years of experience that your staff average and their degrees that they average, we're going to provide you funding so that you can cover that gap between where they're at on the salary schedule and that base teacher salary. And for Bartow County, that's about a 52% increase over the base earnings that we get. So that tells you, in respect to some other systems, where we're at. The reason that can go up is because you have longevity. People just are happy and they don't go anywhere.
Right.
Or it could be because you've had a big riff and a lot of your senior staff may have retired and left, so it may be real low because you have a lot of new staff that comes on. So there's a lot of play that goes on in how that number is computed.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about how that would affect the older employees, with the budget. And then just maybe 2 more questions, but understand there's an estimated $1.8 million in new health care costs. How does this affect the employees as far as is in this budget? Is something like decided what their part of that would be, or are we absorbing all that, or how does that?
We don't pay any premiums on behalf of our employees for dental or anything. The $1.8 million that we've got in there is strictly for our portion of the premiums that are imposed upon us. The employees can expect, based on the budget we've seen, about a 10% increase like they traditionally do. And they can see a change in the plan as well. There's some things they're putting in place. You know how wellness works. It puts more and more responsibility on ourselves. But
So is a lot of this, or at least a big portion of this, from the affordable health care? I mean, I know some of it's from the state and the austerity, but is that hitting us now?
It hadn't yet, but on the employees portion, it's clearly delineated in the budget that we've seen that about 2 to 2.5% of the premium increase or the increase will reflect the PPACA.
I guess.
Cooper, you want to address the February issue of what we're being told with increase in insurance costs?
Yeah, this past year, the Department of Community Health passed on, it was about a $90,000 a month increase to us. I believe that's how much it was. Basically because the plan needed more benefit, or needed more funds to be able to survive. When they put the budget together this year at the state level, one of the things that the legislature came back and said was, we don't want to put a surprise on school systems again. They need to know what to expect the budget. When they looked at the numbers, school systems, for the most part, we may earn, I won't say we, a school system may earn 800 teachers. But because of cuts in the budget and waivers that school systems get, they may be only utilizing 790 of those teachers. So the other 10 teachers that they were being funded on, not only those dollars were being saved, but the health insurance dollars were being saved. And it was allowing the local school systems to absorb the impact of new people coming on board. For instance, if someone, say, went through a divorce, they were covered under their spouse's coverage, now they come on our health coverage. There's a local portion in there that you just can't predict. Once the legislature made their proposal, they wanted to take that money away from the school systems. The difference in what we were trying to accomplish by our cut in our staff. And that would have insulated school systems from getting increases. School systems, on the other hand, felt like we've done a lot of things to be able to survive, and this allows us the flexibility to be able to enroll those people who come in that are unexpectedly, or there's an economic change in the community. And for example, would have been with a sequester, if you had Moody Air Force Base, that all of a sudden, you know, those guys are cut, and all of a sudden you may have, this could be an extreme, but you may have 20 or 30 teachers all of a sudden that are not on that insurance program that come into the school system. You've got to fund that. Well, that funding is again based off of last September's CPI report, who had health insurance, and that's what you're going to get for your funding this coming year. You don't know what that's going to be. So what was proposed was, we'll take that money away and we'll charge one flat premium and we know what it is. That did not happen. It was defeated. So what will happen is the school systems now pay $937 a month for certified health insurance. That'll go to about $945. In the meantime, we can expect to potentially have about $1,016 a month, not increase, but from $945 to $1,016 as we get out to March. That's unbeknownst whether that will happen or not. What we've done is built our budget to be able to encourage that should it happen. We don't know if that'll happen or if it won't. But it's highly likely, given what we know and what we've been told in some print, it's highly likely that you should expect some type of premium increase. Because based on the fact that they had to come back for funding this past year, they feel like they'll have to go back for it this year.
I guess the last thing I'll say, because I appreciate all the hard work y'all do and all the, you know, committees and that. I was looking at the Georgia DOE site, and I just was looking, I guess, under where it had, you know, opportunities and this and that, and I was really amazed that they do a lot of hiring from within and not without. And why I'm bringing this back is to a money issue, but do we currently have a policy of hiring within if we have a highly qualified candidate, that type thing? Because I would think that would be a motivator for current employees if they knew if they had the degrees and et cetera, that they would be first in line. Because I noticed, and I'm getting to the money part in just a second, but the hospital over here, for example, when they started hiring local and more within, their satisfaction went way up because the people knew the patients or their aunts or uncles and all that. And I'm thinking within the school system, if we keep those, our ones currently in the system, able to get these promotions, if they're highly qualified and have the certification, et cetera, that we give them preference over there. Is there a higher cost when you hire from without? Here's the money question. Is there a higher cost when you hire from outside of the, outside of the area? And is there you think more of a motivator to keep the employees within the system if you're not able to give them the raises and you have the furloughs, I guess? And I guess it's a judgmental thing, but it's...
Well, you always ask, why does someone drive out of their community to work in our community? And is it that they want to be here and the economy holds them back from being able to sell a home or something at this point in time? Are they early in their careers and get married, relocating, and those types of things? It's just, it's hard to say. I know one thing we try to focus on is attracting our employees based on our benefits and payroll. We take it seriously. One of the things I think happened, we used to have a $10,000 life insurance policy. It's pretty standard. We wanted to increase that, and I think we went up to $15,000. And I would tell you, that was a big deal. Two, if not three families that lost their family members that worked for us at the time. But whenever you're out and you're trying to recruit, you want to try to make those differences that differentiate us from surrounding entities that hire. And I think, again, you have to remember we're pretty homogeneous group here. I mean, there's not a lot you can go do differently typically. And from a comparative standpoint, those benefits, those days off, those furlough days, those make a difference a lot of times between people choosing to come here or not, I'm sure. It's probably really more of an HR question that they can answer for the people exit or as they come in. They probably get a good feel in their office for why someone chose Bartow County.
Right, I just have this feeling a lot of times now with the bad economic thing, it's becoming more of a job instead of the career and, and that kind of thing. But I'll quit asking questions.
Mr. Kittle, to specifically answer your question, we do not have a policy that requires us to hire from within. I know philosophically, Ms. Staffnell and myself, as well as the principals, understand that we want to work hard to hire our people from within inside our system first, who's given us their experience and their time, and we work hard to do that.
Right, and that's why I keep throwing the word out, highly qualified, because I understand, there may be times where a personality or something may not shine.
Other questions, Matt?
Yeah, I guess first of all, obviously I think it would have been better had we gotten this sooner. I understand there are times when that may not be possible, but I think it's difficult to expect this on something so important to have such a short opportunity to review it. I understand the situation. I guess my one problem with the way we're reporting this information is I just think it's difficult for the community to understand this budget with any kind of context. And I know that when you pull, some of those 2009 numbers, it certainly helps make some of those arguments that you were trying to make, and I certainly get that point. But I guess my question is, why wouldn't we have some 2013, even if it's just a projected year-end, FY 2013, comparative look at this, so that if we're having the community look at this, or even myself or the rest of the board, I can look specifically at instruction or total revenues or total expenditures and see the year-to-year change. I mean, I think that would be a much more instructive way to look at where we're at year-to-year. I just don't understand why we're not reporting it that way. Because, that's really what matters at this point for us is, what happened in 2009 or 2004 or even 2011 is immaterial at this point. What we're trying to do is manage this process from 2013 to what we need to do next year. And I just don't understand why we're not, why we, at least as a board, why we weren't given that kind of comparative view.
I think for the most part, our perspective was certainly we're drawing up on a timeline where as we get to June the 30th, I want to say last year is probably the first time I can remember we've ever passed a spend gap because information was incomplete. And we still don't have the allotment this year. And the numbers regarding health insurance, those are still not hard numbers, those are soft numbers. And as we put this budget together, the most comfortable numbers we really had was our FTE count. Of course, a working allotment sheet, if you want to call it that, and then trying to put together our staffing needs. As we begin to produce this budget, an obvious challenge was trying to figure out, we losing a facility, we've lost one with Cloverleaf, and then putting together the College and Career Academy to gain an understanding. That may sound simple, but you start to think, are you adding staff for that? Are you pulling staff for that? Is it a mixture? And then trying to take in the fact we're using a staffing agency with people who depart from us, not people that are terminated. If you start to put all those factors into play, it becomes a tough estimation on some of those things. But again, for tonight, I think what we want to do is be able to put forward for you a working budget, a living document that could be considered and worked on if there are changes that need to be made to that document. And then as we get out to June the 17th, it's a public hearing. So, we hear comments between now and then, and as we go through that, hopefully, if we need to refine the document, we'll refine it.
I just think, though, it's still, I know it's difficult as all that is. You have some type of working estimation of how you think we're going to close out the year. You referenced that, obviously,
Yes.
a couple of different times in the presentation. So I guess my point is, even if it's a tentative FY13 closeout of the budget compared to our tentative FY 2014 budget, I just think, I'm certainly no accountant. I know most people who are going to be looking at this budget aren't accountants either. I think we need to provide, even if it's just on the website, some way for somebody to look at our expenditures and our revenues. And if nothing else, I think it would help tell the story that you're trying to tell. Is our instructional, has our instructional expenses gone up or down from 2013 to this tentative 2014 budget? The central office expenses, have those things gone up, or have they gone down? And I think it's difficult. I don't see how there's any way that somebody in the community can look at this and have any contextual analysis of how to understand these numbers if we're not at least giving them some type of 2013 to 2014 comparative view. And what we're trying to do as we go through this process, as much as hire our teachers back and educate our students and all those other things, we're also trying to educate the community about the situation that we're in. And I think we have to provide them some way to look at these numbers, in context to understand where we're at.
We can do that. That's not a problem at all. Matter of fact, what you're asking for is something that I've already worked on, not just from a fund balance standpoint. When we look at last year compared to this year, we feel like we're going to pick up about $1.5 million in revenue. While at the same point in time, on the expense side, we're only adding about $900,000 of expenses. And we're doing that in light of the health insurance premium increases and the step increases in face of actually through attrition and asking those folks. And when you begin to look, just a line item number I can tell you is we budgeted $75.6 million last year for instruction. We're going to budget $75.4 million this year for instruction. But again, it's a beginning point. I take your point well, but it's a beginning point for us to put it out there and for the community to begin to ask. Obviously, you can't field 100 questions, and you want to try to answer as many of those with the documentation that you're talking about creating or having put out there if it's created to preempt those questions. But over the course of the next 3 weeks, I hope people who are out there, it'll be posted, and obviously you folks are out there in the community, and people who see it advertised would ask questions, whether it's in this room or whether they come up here. We're more than happy to answer those questions and provide insight into how things are going. There's other mediums and other methods, and of course it's late in the game to do that, but I think it's a philosophy of you folks. Information can be dangerous if it's not communicated in a pretty exact manner. And one of the things that happens with the budget is sometimes people look at it as an estimation, projection, guesstimates, whatever they want to call it. But from a historical standpoint, we try to put it together based on, you know, we showed here earlier, from 2009 to 2014. But do you do a road show with school council? What do you do early in the process? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that, as a board, you know, certainly we're open to do it so that we have a transparent process and a process that has valid input.
I just think it would be helpful, even if there was a column that said, you know, 2013 projected ending, and next to these numbers, you know, there's a plus amount or a minus amount, so that people can understand the difference. Because honestly, if somebody asked me that question as of right now, I couldn't answer it. And, you know, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that the financial piece of all of this is matching, you know, kind of the rhetoric or the leadership or the message that we're sending out as a school system. And there's no way to do that without the numbers piece of it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we can put that together in one document. Obviously, someone could go on the website now and they can pull last year's budget, but again, having it collectively in one piece, I don't think that's a problem. We can put that together.
Any other questions? Comments?
Well, some of that information would be a guess, you know, particularly in student transportation. You know, Mr. Elrod and I keep trying to lock in the fuel rates, but as they keep going up, we don't want to lock them in. We've been successful in locking them in one time, and we always have conversation about that, and we want to do that, but as it continues to move up, where do you lock it in? And we're trying to be as prudent about that as we can, but there are some areas that, no question about it, once we get our teachers hired, we can project what that's going to be at the end of the year, and you've heard that's a major portion of our budget. As that changes, we add students, get more FTE, then that changes some as well. But some of it is just a guess.
I do want to say, Dr. Harper, that I know that you and Jody and I know Davis and some of the boards are looking at the propane going to a meeting Thursday, looking at this. So I know you are actively looking for the cost savings there. So.
Yeah. Mr. Elrod has looked very carefully at all the benefits that the system and the community can gain through working with EPA and everybody else to try to, you know, rather than a bus costing us $95,000, if we can get some money from that by drilling a hole in our block and cutting it in half to get some $30,000 for that, we're prepared to do that. And you see Mr. Elrod moving in that direction. Board members, let me remind you that this is a tentative budget. As Mr. Hooper says, it's a working document open for information and feedback from you. In order for us to meet the timelines that we have by June the 30th, I don't have any problem in signing a spending resolution if we don't have a budget by June the 30th. It doesn't speak well of the school system to do that, because I think as 6 individuals with Mr. Hooper's help and support that we certainly can do that. But it's a starting point. This is typically what is presented to boards and what is typically advertised throughout the state of Georgia. And again, unfortunately, it's very difficult for us more lately to get accurate information about where we stand. A question that Mr. Hooper and I have at this point in time is the state going to pay for the park test? We don't know that. The governor's had conversation about that. That could be a significant amount for next year and a more significant amount in years to come. So we work hard to give you the most accurate numbers that we can provide you based on our latest information. So, Mr. Chairman.
Other discussion? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve the 2014 tentative budget.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor, if you'll raise your hand, please. It's 5-0.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hooper. Well, I don't believe we have any public participation.
No, sir, we do not.
This time I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is 5-0. Thank you.